So breathing into this energy, we affirm our opening statement together. There is but one presence and one power in my life and in the universe. God the good, omnipotence.
And we'll start with that sing praise part, and you can feel that building. It starts slow and then it builds up and comes right out the top of your head. Sing praise, 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 sing praise. Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever, forever, forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever, forever, forever. Well done. Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning and welcome. Great to be here with you. For those who are here in the room, if you're joining online, whether now or at some future time, we are grateful to be in spiritual community together. And so we have a guest speaker this morning, Michael Bogar, who I will introduce more fully a little later, but he is well known to many of you, although it's his first time in the building. So we're excited to have him here with us. Reverend Karen will be back next week, nice and warmed up from the Bahamas and her yoga retreat. So let us first begin with affirming our mission statement. Together? We are a welcoming spiritual community, thriving in the heart of Seattle, celebrating, inspiring, and deepening our individual and collective spiritual journeys. And so it is. So I just want to mention, if you are joining us online, we're so happy you're here with us. If you have a prayer request, I just invite you to put that into the chat, and then we will pray together afterwards. At the end of the service, those names also go out to the prayer team and Silent Unity. And if you're here in the room, there's little prayer request forms just outside the door in the lobby. So just one announcement I want to highlight is that next week is our annual meeting following the service. It is our another first, here in our new building. So since we're no longer in a state of emergency, it's going to be different from the last couple of years. So there will be an online component, but just informational only, and we'll send out that Facebook live stream for those that aren't able to join us in person. But it will only be in person that we're counting the quorum and taking the votes. And so we hope that everybody that is a member can make it here in person and join together in community. And we know that some folks aren't able to be here physically, so there will be that Facebook component to at least get the information that's coming via the online stream. And then if you have questions and you're not here in the room, you are welcome to email those into the board or the staff, and we'll respond after the annual meeting. I'm going to now invite Inez from the outreach team up to share an announcement.
Thank you, Diane. In February, Seattle Unity will continue to support local nonprofits which care for the homeless. The Outreach Committee is collecting toiletries to stuff into hygiene kits. We need travel size shampoo and conditioner, or just conditioner by itself, lip balm, travel soap, travel deodorants, and lotion. We will be accepting cash donations every Sunday in the foyer. And you can also drop off the toiletries there. You can also donate by giving by you can also donate by going online to the Seattle Unity website, or you can text to give. One place to get inexpensive items is Dollar Tree, so that's a good thing. So please stand and greet one another. Thank you.
Stay standing as you are able. I love this groove. This is the groove to play that funky music. We're doing it for a different song, but that little guitar you hear, that's Tony Surzo over there on guitar. Hey, Tony. Tony volunteers his time. He is an awesome player. Michael Bogar is our guest speaker today, and he likes to talk a lot about archetypes, and it made me think about the various names of God, because he is he's a sort of a polyglot, knows a lot about a lot of different religions. So this song has a lot of different names of God. Originally when we wrote it, it was just about from a Jewish tradition, Jewish viewpoint. But we're going to add a little bit more to that, and I'll show you how. It'll involve Jennifer, Leslie. It's Leslie's first time, by the way. And Scott, and you. But try learning these names. It's a lot of names. Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. Try that, Yahweh. Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. That second part. I am that I am. I am that I am. That part's easy. You know you can do that part. I am. I am that I am. I am that I am. Start again. Yahweh. Yahweh. Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. Yahweh, Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. I am that I am. I am that I am. Do that again. I am that I am. I am that I am. I am that I am. Jennifer.
Oh, so some of these words about God are infinite, radiant is, the one,
That's a good one.
cornerstone, the absolute realm, great spirit, Gaia,
Oh,
Mother Earth,
I like that.
Artemis, bread of life, beloved, Abba, God with us, fountain of living waters.
Fountain of living waters. So each one of these names electrifies something else inside you, and one of those names reaches out sometimes and says, oh, I recognize that one. And another is a new one to you. So imagine some of your names that come in. We're going to sing this song again. Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yahweh. Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. Again. Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty
graciousness, Pachamama, Saraswati, infinity, love, Shakti, Daystar, Logos, divinity.
Divinity. So imagine a few of those. I hope something else lit up in you as she was saying those names. We'll start again with Yahweh Jehovah. 1, 2, 3. Yahweh Jehovah, Elohim Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. Yahweh Jehovah, Elohim Adonai, Redeemer, Emmanuel, Almighty El Shaddai. Scott.
Universe, presence, divine mother, Zeus, mother, father, God, Shango, Amaterasu, Shiva, spirit of mankind, living nature, higher self, Rose, Rick, Gail, Michael, Jackie, Scott.
Yeah! I am. I am that 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 I am. Let's do I am again. I am that I am. I am that I am. Hey, last time. I am that I am. I am that I am. Well done. Please be seated. That whole first part of the service is designed to help us wake up and get some blood flowing. But we're entering into a part of the service that is fundamentally more contemplative. And we will have a 3 to 4 minute silent meditation during this part. So I encourage you, become comfortable in your chairs. And our first step into this new contemplative space is given to us through a reading by one of our longtime spiritual authorities in the community, Gail Crumpton. Please join us.
Good morning, church.
Good morning, Gail.
Every one of you is a spiritual authority. Just wanted to clarify that. So today's reading's from Lost Knowledge of the Imagination by Gary Lachman. I believe imagination is one of those things which we all know immediately, but which we would find difficult to define. I will offer my own definition of imagination, or at least one kind of imagination. Imagination is the ability to grasp realities that are not immediately present, realities that are beyond the grasp of our physical senses. This kind of imagination is not an escape from reality or a substitute for reality, but a deeper engagement with reality. Imagination is our ability to grasp reality and to collaborate with its creation.
Thank you, Gail. So sometimes these readings come through and you're like, what was it that she said? I want to remember that bit. So I want to encourage you to go and check out the Facebook page or the Instagram, which is often where we post those so that you can go back and reflect on them later. Also, sometimes some of our speakers have slides, things like Michael and I have. And so you'll be able to go and look for them there. Like, I want to remember, what were those points that you provided? So that's a resource for you. And in addition, we have our Facebook private group, which is a place where the community can meet online and talk and, sort of bring up some of those conversations and bring them on for a while, talk about what's going on in the community. So I'd invite you to find the page, request to join so you can join the conversation there. So this song that we're going to do for our meditation is one from our old hymnal. I love that. And so I think the original words were, Father and I are one. We're going to sing, the Spirit and I are one. But I want you to think about those words that we spoke here, those names for God, and see if you can find one that rang for you or reminded me of the one that is yours, that is your, that you've found that connects you to Spirit. And maybe replace that in your mind as we say Spirit together for this meditation song. Hold it in your heart. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. Are one, are one, are one, are one. The Spirit and I are one. Sing that with me. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. Are one, are one, are one, are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit
slither wildly as they slip away across the universe. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open mind, possessing and caressing me. Jaguru Deva, nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Images of broken light which dance beyond me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Jai Guru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Sounds of laughter, shades of love are ringing through my open ears, inviting and inciting me. Limitless, undying love which shines around me like a million suns and calls me on and on across the universe. Jai Guru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Jai Guru Deva. 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 Jai Guru
Stephanie Ann Johnson.
So again, many of you know our guest speaker this morning, Michael Bogar, but I'm sure a few of you don't, whether you're here in the room or joining us online. So I just want to share a little bit. Michael is currently an adjunct professor of religious studies and world religions at Central Texas College at a campus located on Lewis McChord Base in Tacoma, Washington. His approach is from a full life experience, and as such, he can relate to a wide range of people. Michael has studied theology, union depth psychology, and universal mythologies. He has a way of communicating to those at the top of their game as well as those ready to quit. Anybody can relate to that? He has taught at the graduate and undergraduate levels and has a proven ability to inform and inspire students ranging from the informal beginner to the serious scholar. Students and audience members frequently comment on his depth of scholarship, personal approach, and sense of humor. Please join me in welcoming Michael.
Every time I hear that, part of me cringes. And part of me is like, well, that's partly true. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you hear your accomplishments and you go, well, that sounds better than it probably really is. Anyway, it's good to be here this morning. We're going to talk about imagination. Also, it's good to see some of you. I haven't seen you for a long frickin' time. Yeah. And this building. Wow. This is the coolest church in Seattle. Okay, so imagination. I'm going to be doing a class on this in 4 weeks. Live and online, is that, or just online? Up to me. I would rather do it here live, so if you want to come here live, we'll do it here and online. So we're going to do a class on active imagination. How many of you are familiar with that term? Don't be bashful. Just put your hand up if you are familiar with that term. A few of you. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you tell me what it's about? Briefly?
I was going to go with intentionally engaging in your imagination as a tool for efforts in various things, such as spirituality.
Okay, intentionally engaging your imagination. Anybody else? Who else raised? Now nobody's going to raise their hand. Anybody else? Who raised your hand? Who wants to try it? You want to give it a shot? Okay. All right. Add something she left out, maybe.
Well, I'll try. Intentionally going after ideas and processes that are perhaps outside of the 5 physical senses.
Very good. Very good. Very good. One more. Here's a fellow back here. All right. Brave soul. What is active imagination?
It's a tool for creating your reality.
Okay. It's a tool for creating reality. All right. So the key idea here is imagination. And how many of you, by the way, are just out of curiosity, remember Dark Shadows? The soap opera. How many of you were fans? Ashley Rushton. I did not. I am now watching it for the first time. And I don't know why. But it's a little bit addictive, and it's silly, and yet it somehow addresses the paranormal in a way I think that very few shows ever have, and I think that was the allure. People were looking at the old Frankenstein, vampire, werewolf, all those sort of paranormal, ghosty things, and rushing home from school. A lot of teenagers was watching this back in the 60s, early 70s. So I'm watching it now, and one of the things that I have noticed is a recurring mention of imagination. Do you remember it? Anytime something supernatural happens, something out of the normal, someone inevitably says, oh, that must be part of your imagination. You must have imagined it over and over. Do you remember that? Over and over and over again. It says that. And I thought, this is really an indicator of the mindset of the modern world, the modern one-dimensional world we live in. And by that I mean one-dimensional, meaning material reality is the only reality there is, or at least the primary reality. Because anything outside this one-dimensional material world, you must have imagined it, which implies it's not real. So what we're going to do this morning is suggest that maybe the imaginal is real. And active imagination is actively engaging as an individual with that real imaginal realm. I want to start with the first slide I have here. and just very, very briefly suggest that there are about three primary views of imagination. The first one is imaging the eternal world. That is a form of imagination. If I say to you right now, visualize your car, most of us can pretty much get some, not a literal picture of it, but we get some image, yes? Or remember, or imagine your living room, how it's laid out. Can you see that? So that's one kind of imagination, and none of us argue against that. It's like, of course. A second kind is imaginary creations. This is where we make crap up. If I said to you, think of two animals, all of you, just in your mind, think of two animals randomly. Now think of one household appliance. Now combine those two animals and that one household appliance into a single being. Anybody do that? All right, it wasn't hard, was it? That's making stuff up. That is a form of imagination, and cartoons and lots of writers use that kind of imagination. We do it ourselves all day long. But there's a third kind of imagination that I'm calling the imaginal function. All three of these are valid. They're all three valid ways of defining or describing imagination. But this morning I want to focus on this third one, the imaginal function, and I'll describe it here in a moment. And that's what we will be focusing on for 4 weeks in the class that's coming up. We're going to explore this thing and take it apart. This morning, the imaginal function is going to be like a sort of helicopter ride over the territory. We're going to take a very quick run across some of the big ideas in it and explore those. But when we get to the class, we're going to really look at it in some detail because it's an infinite topic, infinitely complex, and infinitely neglected. So, what do I mean by the imaginal function? These folks that gave you definitions a moment ago really touched on most of it. But the imaginal function, as I understand it, is the human, it's an organ. We have organ systems in our bodies. It's an organ system that has 5 senses, not physical senses, but we'll call them spiritual or psychological senses, that can actually get in touch with an objective realm called the imaginal realm. It's as real as this material world. C.S. Lewis, in his fantasy, Chronicles of Narnia, and Tolkien, and J.R. Rowling, J.K.? Yeah, Rowling, all capitalize on this idea that there is a realm that is populated by actual objective presences. Now, for those of us that are open to the supernatural or to the paranormal, that's no big surprise. The surprise may be that this realm, at least in this theory of the imaginal realm, that realm is acting in and around and through us 24 hours a day. Everything that goes on in our lives in this imaginal realm theory is somehow connected intimately to the imaginal realm. So what do we mean by imaginal realm? Put up the next slide, please. What I want to do this morning, I've wrestled with how to do this, and I've chosen to basically look at these 4 aspects of the imaginal realm, and I'll read through them very quickly, and then give you some examples from living human beings that you all probably know that carry these 4 aspects, or at least most of them. So first of all, if we look at the imaginal realm, it is an objective reality. Does that make sense? It's not something you're making up. It's something that exists whether you are here or not, whether you are impacted by it or not. It exists independent of the human brain. William James called this the transmission theory. The famous psychologist back in the early 1900s gave a talk on immortality. And in there, he shocked a lot of the material, one-dimensional psychologists by saying it is possible that the brain is not the source of all thought, that the brain actually may be more of a mediator transmitting thought that comes to us from the atmosphere. By the way, does anybody know where the term atmosphere came from? Just out of curiosity. How many of you are familiar with Hinduism? How many of you are familiar with the term Atman? Atman, that spark of Brahman, the infinite unknowable one, put itself out in little tiny bits and pieces called Atman. An Atman sphere is the sphere of the invisible, the imaginal, if you will. So, of course, we picked it up and turned it into a weather term. Atmosphere is Atman sphere. But if you look at it in its original term, the Sanskrit term, it is the realm of the imaginal. And rishis, are you familiar with rishis? Maharishi. Maha means great. Rishi means seer. A maharishi, a great seer, is one who can tune in, turn the dial, almost at will, to Atman sphere and receive the information, the eternal dharma that is always filling the atmosphere. Truth is everywhere present. Whether before this earth got here, truth existed. Atman sphere preceded all existence. So this is the idea that there is an objective reality that has truth in it. In the Declaration of Independence, this is talked about. Anybody know where? Jefferson said, these are self-evident truths: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So right there, they're acknowledging this prevalent worldview was very prevalent for all time until really the last 100 or 200 years of Western history. This realm of evident truth is the imaginal realm. Truth, justice. Now, of course, human beings have always manifested it in some sort of form. The Statue of Liberty stands in the harbor, and of course, that is a statue of liberty. Well, does liberty exist in the statue? No, it is a symbol. It is a mediator, a conduit of the imaginal realm's eternal liberty. So this is the first idea. Secondly, each human has an imaginal organ connected to the imaginal realm. In other words, we have the antenna, if you will, or the cell phone receiver, however it works, to pick up the signals in Atman sphere, and that they are always around us. Carl Jung, we're going to talk about him here in a moment, suggested that our whole lives are spent in the experience of latent material from the unconscious coming into us through dreams and every single relationship we're in. So Atman sphere is always passively active, passively communicating with us everywhere. Every person you meet, you are meeting a person who is a bridge into the Atman sphere, whether they piss you off or take you into ecstasy. This includes politics. You are not just pissed off at a politician. You are pissed off because there is something in you that gets pissed off. And in this view of the imaginal realm, there is consciousness constantly maturing in us through every single encounter. Every person. If you are married or in a relationship, you know how that goes. One moment you're so in love with them you don't think you can live without them. The next moment you're thinking, I wish I were single again. I know, I'm not asking you to raise your hands. But in this view, every one of us has an organ that is connected to this imaginal realm, and this imaginal realm is surging into consciousness all day long. Your drive here this morning, you were participating in the imaginal realm because you had thoughts, did you not? You had feelings, you had emotions. Did you ever notice how they skip around like a hummingbird? One to the next, and suddenly you're off on a tangent on this, and then you're off on this. You have an imaginal organ. Number 3, all connected, there are 5 senses in the imaginal realm. And they correspond to, and maybe more, but they correspond to the physical senses. The imagination visualizes. Most of us understand that, yes? But it also, there's an auditory aspect to the imaginal realm. I'm not literally hearing voices, but you say, you know, I had a dream and I heard them say. So that you can imagine through auditory sense. And there is a tactile sense. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Would you really not touch it with a 10-foot pole? But we talk about this touching, imaginal. Olfactory, sense of smell. That stinks. An idea stinks. So all of these senses are there in the organ, and we use them all day long to contact this objective imaginal realm. And number 4, through this imaginal organ and these senses and our connection to this realm, we can actively participate. So passively, this is going on all the time, and this is part of the class, is to start to get in touch with how much of this latent unconscious material is coming into us passively through our dreams, through our fantasies, through our addictions, through our compulsions. I did a class one time, we talked about television, and I asked people to name their favorite television show. And they were all these, British sort of dramas and comedies, highbrow stuff. And finally, at the end, one woman said, I watch soap opera. And people kind of went, and then others started telling the truth. This is the imaginal realm. We are attracted to the kinds of entertainment, whether it's music, television, movies, whatever it happens to be, because there is something in our consciousness that wants to milk or connect with the unconscious as it's moving us toward maturity in every relationship. Now, what I want to do from here on out is read you 3 examples of these 4 aspects and show you how they show up in psychology, and they show up in novelists and in scientists. And some of you are going, oh, scientists don't imagine, they know the truth. Well, if you've just been through a COVID epidemic, you know that's probably not the case. So this is a psychologist named Carl Jung, and he is really kind of the founder of this notion and this practice, and it's mainly a practice of active imagination. Jung was born in 1875. In his mid-30s, he was associated with Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud was an international celebrity. And by association, Jung was an international, or becoming an international celebrity. And Freud designated Carl Jung to be his heir apparent. He was going to take Jung's psychology, and Jung's psychology was very dogmatic. It was like, this is the way it is, this is the way the psyche works. Well, Carl Jung had some questions about that. And he said, and we'll get into some of that in the class, but he basically said, I don't agree with everything you say, Dr. Freud, in all due respect. Well, guess what Dr. Freud did? He fired him. He wrote him a letter in January of 1913 and succinctly said, I think we should sever all relationships from here out. End of story. Well, now Jung was on the cusp of becoming an international celebrity and an academic star worldwide. How do you suppose he responded when he was kicked out the door with no ties to those opportunities? He went into a deep spiral of despair, deep depression. Put yourself in that place. Your career's laid out for you. I mean, international fame, and then suddenly you're a nobody. He went into a deep depression for years. But during that time of depression, he allowed himself to go into the depression rather than to fight it or to take drugs for it. And at that time, cocaine was the prescribed drug, and Freud used it a lot. He decided not to take medication, but to go into the depths and the darkness. And he said one day as he was sitting in a dark room in despair, not contemplating suicide, but you know how you sometimes kind of contemplate suicide? Like if I were dead, I wouldn't be so bad. He was in that state of mind, and he said, I found myself dropping into a dark place, like a dungeon or a cellar, and he met someone who came to him in that quiet time and identified himself as Philemon. Philemon. And Philemon, we won't get into that here. Here's what Jung writes later in his biography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. He said, Philemon and other figures of my fantasies brought home to me, and here he had a conversation with this character in his imagination, Philemon, brought home to me the crucial insight that there are things in the psyche, the soul, which I do not produce, but which produce themselves and have their own life. Philemon represented a force which was not myself. This is important for our first point here. Philemon was not part of Jung's thought process. Philemon came somehow from the outside. By the way, Roger Waters does this beautifully in Pink Floyd, The Wall. I would love to in fact, I did this years ago. I got together with a group of people, and we went through The Wall, song by song, and saw Roger Waters' active imagination at work in his own life as therapy in writing The Wall, because it tells his story. Anyway, in that Pink Floyd, it's a very similar idea. Remember in there in Comfortably Numb? is there anybody out there? And then a little later, is there anybody in there? So both questions are asked in that. And this is what Jung is discovering here, is there is somebody out there. And there's also somebody in there. So active imagination is the discovery of this objective imaginal realm that is populated by what Jung, tongue-in-cheek, called the little people. And that the little people come and actively engage with the ego. This is not something where you check your ego at the door. This is a practice where you bring your ego because it knows a lot. Not much, really, but a lot. And it's the only thing that's going to change in a participatory experience of the imaginal realm. So you bring your ego to it, and this is what Jung is finding. He's discovering this here on his own. That's why his psychology is called an empirical psychology, because he broke with Freud's theory and said, this is, I think, the way the psyche really works. He said, Philemon represented a force which was not myself. In my fantasies, I held conversations with him, and he said things which I had not consciously thought. For I observed clearly that it was he who spoke, not I. He, Philemon, said, I treated thoughts as if I generated them myself. This is the dominant view in our culture. Every thought in your head comes from neural activity, chemical activity in the brain. You are the source of all your thoughts. This disagrees with that and says you are the source of a lot of thoughts, called your ego, but there are other thinkers that are transmitting, and that's why we are so effing crazy. You know this. I was talking to my wife on the way here, and I said, you know, what this reminds me of is when we get into disagreements, and it's not really often, which is a miracle given that I'm in the relationship, but when we do, I find myself at times saying things, and I mean them the moment I say them, and that's what she gets to hear, but you know what happens in my mind after I've said it? Where'd that come from? That's not entirely true. Why did you say that, you idiot? Well, it is kind of true. You know what I'm talking about? This goes on all day long. And the first step is to become aware of it, that we are in constant dialogue. And the dialogue is not just with I, because often, well, let's go on and see what Jung says. He said, I treated thoughts as if I generated them myself, but in his view, Philemon's view, thoughts were like animals in the forest, or people in a room, or birds in the air. And Philemon added, if you should see people in a room or birds in the air, you would not think that you made these people or these birds, or that you were responsible for them being here. In other words, he's saying, there is somebody out there. It's not you. It was Philemon who taught me psychic objectivity. Again, our first point here. The reality of the psyche. Through him, the distinction was clarified between myself and the object of my thought. He confronted me in an objective manner. He uses this term objective here over and over, so the reader will see we're not talking about a subjective experience of my own personal navel-gazing. We're talking about an experience where there may be, and we have to say that in this modern world because I'm sounding a little crazy right now with this. This is why most modern psychology, does not have anything to do with Jung. Through him, the distinction was clarified between myself and the object of my thought. He confronted me in an objective manner, and I understood that there is something in me which can say things that I do not know and do not intend, things that may even be directed against me. That's the conversation that I was talking to my wife. I said, I'll say things, and the voice will say, that's not true. You were mad, so you said that to hurt her. But no, I didn't. I don't want to hurt her. I love her. Well, you love her and you want to hurt her. Both can be true because you are many people. Psychologically, Philemon represented superior insight. This is where Jung got his first archetypal character, the wise old man, the Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was a mysterious figure to me. At times he seemed to me quite real, as if he were a living personality. I went walking up and down the garden with him, talking. And to me, he was what the Hindu call a guru. That's an example. All of these elements are in that little statement. The imaginal realm's objective. Jung had an organ that allowed him to participate in conversation with these imaginal realm through his imaginal senses. How are we doing, Diane, time-wise? Are we out of time? Getting close. All right, I'll go through these very quickly. So now a novelist, Stephen King. Any of you heard of Stephen King? Active Imagination is best-selling fantasy 2022. Last year, and this was during the COVID epidemic, Stephen King asked himself this question. This is on Amazon if you want to go check it out. This is a book that he wrote called Fairy Tale in 2022. Anybody read it by any chance? Okay, we got one reader there. He said, I asked myself this question, what could you write that would make you happy? King said, as if my imagination had been waiting for the question to be asked, and this is active imagination because you have to actively ask questions and listen for the answers, not force them, but listen. He said, my imagination had been waiting for the question to be asked, and I immediately saw a vast deserted city. Well, I'm sure those of you who lived in Seattle saw some of that too. Deserted but alive. I saw the empty streets, the haunted buildings, a gargoyle head lying overturned in the street. That's very Stephen King. I saw smashed statues of what I don't know, but eventually found out. And this is what happens in active imagination. There's a lot of stuff you don't know until you participate, and then you start to find out. I saw a huge sprawling palace with glass towers so high their tips pierced the clouds. Those images released the story I had to tell. This is therapy. That's why James Hillman, my favorite psychologist, said, you're always in therapy. When you go to a therapist, all you're doing is you're bringing your therapeutic life to be discussed in detail directly with a person. But we're always in therapy. That's Stephen King. One last one. Albert Einstein. How many of you know Albert Einstein? World famous. This is a quote from Einstein. You know, he came up with the whole E=mc² and the whole quantum light theory, the speed of light and all of that stuff. First of all, I remember reading in a short biography about him that when he was young, he would sit in a room and either light a candle or I think I read somewhere that turned on a light switch. But he turned on a light switch and he imagined a person on a surfboard up against the wall near the light switch, and that when it went on, the light went across the room, how long it would take that guy to surf across the room on a light wave. That's imagination. He said this, I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Most of you have heard that part of the quote. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. So what Jung is saying here, and this is true of a lot of scientists, that when you engage the imagination, you wonder. That's what imagination does. It wonders, and it can come across truth. But then you take the truth and put it to the scientific test, and sometimes you can prove it through mathematical equations, empirical observations, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the truths we all go, yeah, I'm into that. Well, Einstein started with the imagination and discovered the truth long before he proved it. He also said this. He said, there was a time when I wondered, what if one were to run after a ray of light? What if one were riding on the beam of light? If one were to run fast enough, would it no longer move at all? This is imagination. So what I want to do as I close here this morning is to suggest that each of us has this capacity. Passively, imagination is working in us constantly, always. But you can either go online and look up YouTube clips on active imagination. You'll learn a lot about it. Or you can read some books on it. It's very, very good. Or you can come to the class or do all three. And we'll get into it in a lot more detail and the practice of it. I want to close with a very quick, short meditation that allows you to do some active imagination. So if you want to close your eyes, take a breath or two, kind of calm down. And I want you to just sort of open a space where you're saying to that imaginal realm, And many of those who participate in active imagination say that that dark space on the eyelids is where the imagination comes into being, or at least comes through to being. So look at that dark place on your eyelids, that quiet, dark place, and be prepared to listen. Something may show up, something may not. Don't be discouraged either way. But I'm going to ask a question. I want you to see what pops, quote unquote, pops into your imagination or into your mind. And here's the question. Who is the most important person in your life? Many of you had something come immediately. Now the next question is this. What can you do today to let that person know how important they are to you? See what pops into mind. Again, don't be troubled if nothing showed up. That's frequently the case. But if something did show up, and Jung was clear about this, that when active imagination produces a result, that is, something comes, an insight comes, something shows up, act it out, incarnate it. Because it is not a full course of active imagination until the message has been received, the answer received, and it is enacted in the flesh. So I would encourage you today to enact whatever came to mind about the most important person and what you can do to show them how important they are to you. Take a breath. We'll turn it back over to Diane. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And if you would like to take a deeper dive, diaper dive, that works too, but a deeper dive into active imagination, the imaginal realm, you can find more info about his class and sign up for it online at seattleunity.org. And so now as our community guides are coming forward, it is that time to give of our tithes and our love offerings. If you give electronically, there's little cards that just symbolize that electronic gift behind the chairs, and you're welcome to pull one of those out and hold those. You can give online at seattleunity.org. There's a little donate button up in the right-hand corner, or via text, 206-350-8448. And so now I just invite you to center in your heart, just holding your gift in your hand or in your imagination, and join me in blessing your offering. I give willingly, joyfully, and lovingly, knowing that God is the constant source of my supply. I give with graciousness and receive with gratitude. Amen.
You ought to count your blessings, and you'll see what the Lord has done. You ought to count your blessings, and you'll see what the Lord has done. He will come when you call. He'll pick you up whenever you fall. You ought to count your blessings, and you'll see what the Lord has done. You ought to count your blessings, count your blessings, and you'll see what the Lord has done. You ought to count your blessings, count your blessings, and you'll see what the Lord has done. He will come when you call. He'll pick you up when you fall. Whenever you fall, you ought to count your blessings, and see what the Lord I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Got up this morning.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Have food on the table, y'all.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Got all of my limbs, y'all.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Got feet to walk on.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Oh, beautiful church, y'all.
Count
Come
your
on.
blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Got a really good band, y'all.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Had a really good talk, y'all. I know there's a blessing. Hallelujah.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
Hallelujah.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
You know I love you.
Count your blessings.
You know that's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
You better count, y'all.
Count your blessings.
I know there's a blessing.
Count your blessings.
You ought to count.
Count your blessings.
Count your blessing.
Count your blessings.
And you'll see what the Lord has done. Thank y'all.
You feel it? So let us put a final blessing on our offering. And so we are so thankful for the many gifts that come in and through this ministry to bless this community and bless the larger community. And so we see these gifts returning to each giver in expected and unexpected ways. And for this, we are so grateful. Amen. So I just wanted to mention that our prayer chaplain on duty this morning is Susan Waldron. Susan has the purple stole available, and so when we join together in prayer, we are actually raising consciousness together, and there's real power in doing that with someone else. So I invite you to seek out Susan if you have a celebration or something that you want to pray about. So we now enter into a time of prayer for those who have requested prayer. So again, I just invite you to take a breath, center in our hearts, and we call forth that power and presence, that one power, that one presence in the lives of Tammy and Alexandria. We affirm divine order unfolding for Dion, Diana, Keith, and Ron. We affirm health and well-being, that all is well in the lives of Rieko and Rick, in Alan, for Bill, and for Mike. And I also ask that we hold the people of Turkey and Syria in our prayers. Just holding everyone there in love and light. We bless those souls that are crossing over. May there be grace and healing, and for all of the workers, we see strength, uplifting them and holding them, that there may now be healing. And so let us take this into our prayer of protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen. Thank you, Heather.
Let's sing a closing song together. I'm going to ask you to stand. If you would like to hold hands, go ahead and hold hands. But if there's someone who is next to you who prefers not to, please respect the consent as well. I want to say thank you to all of our worship arts team members today, as well as our special guest, Michael Bogar. Remember, you can sign up for his class. I would encourage you to do that early. We love having him around, but he won't teach it unless there's registration. So you Unity hippies who like to be like, oh, maybe I'll wander in late. No, you won't. You're going to sign up and you're going to love it. Also, thank you for our guest, Stephanie Ann Johnson. Do you know Stephanie Ann has their first triple door solo show coming up in April? Please buy tickets to that. That's a big deal. That's a milestone event. And also Outreach is looking for your feminine hygiene stuff, or not just feminine, all the hygiene. Masculine, non-binary hygiene. Let's sing All Is Well.